Thank you very much, the Attorney General and the Minister for Economy, my colleague Minister, PS Education, Melanie, invited guests, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Nisambula Vinaka, and a very good morning to you. As I walked in the room, I saw plastic bottles. And when I look at plastic bottles, I think of one thing, mosquitoes. I just think of mosquitoes. And the reason being, Fiji always has an outbreak, like other Pacific islands, of dengue fever. We're also exposed to Zika and chikungunya, but for the discussion today, I'm going to talk about two things: plastics and health, of course, vector-borne diseases. And then I came up with one line for myself, and I said, whatever toxins we put in the environment, it comes back to us. Whether we pollute the air, whether we pollute our oceans and rivers, whether we pollute our soils, it all comes back to us in the form of the water we drink, the air we breathe, and the food we eat. And that is added to what I talked about, vector-borne diseases, especially for us. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present a brief perspective from the health agenda on this topic, and how we can use contemporary arts to ensure that we continue to advocate for these things. We're talking about carbon footprints, and I think now we are talking about how do we reduce our plastic footprints. That's a big, big issue. As mentioned earlier, we need all stakeholder collaborations. We will not be able to do it alone. And we will not be able to find solutions in this room alone. We will have to take it down to the very grassroots, to all the communities across, to ensure that we are all on the same page. So, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, plastics, yes, it's causing havoc. We've heard about plastics, the amount of plastics in the environment, the uses of plastics. And why do we tend to use plastics? Because it's very convenient, very, very convenient. And so I have a picture in my mind, and I wanted to say this. Wouldn't the world become more fantastic if we were to stop using plastics? How do we do that? Advocacy. Last night, I was invited to the launch of the Fiji Hibiscus Festival. And the contestants used that platform as an advocacy for the 5 R's. We knew 3 R's. Now they've added 2 more. So now it's reduce, recycle, reuse, refuse, and repurpose. And I think that's the way to go. And I'd like to take my hats off to those, the king contestant, the teen contestant, the queen contestant, who came out so strongly advocating for the 5 R's. And that's a very practical way of doing that. But how do you do that? The Environment Minister talked about changing mindsets. We have to change mindsets. And how do we do that? We can use contemporary arts, a good way to move forward. So ladies and gentlemen, over the few decades, we humans have managed to dump tons and tons of garbage into our oceans and our waterways. Of the most devastating elements of this pollution, as most of you are aware, is plastic takes thousands and thousands of years to decay. And as a result, coming back to food and oceans, fish and wildlife are becoming intoxicated. Consequently, the toxins from the plastic have entered the food chain, and where do they end up? They end up within us, threatening human health. In the most polluted areas in the ocean, the mass of plastic exceeds the amount of plankton 6 times over. This is a large piece of evidence that leaves the problem of polluted oceans undeniable. While reading up to an extent on plastic pollution, I was saddened to read that we now have what we call 3 plastic islands, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, also known as the Pacific Trash Vortex. And it is located in the central North Pacific Ocean, estimated to be larger than the state of Texas, which is about 40 times the size of Fiji. Sad. There are also garbage patches in the Indian and Atlantic Ocean, and the patches are defined as containing a high amount of plastic as compared to the surrounding oceans. To date, 5 patches in total have been discovered, and I'm sure there are many, many more yet to be discovered. Plastics, as you know, are toxins to living beings, and we shouldn't at any point take this fact lightly. Plastic toxins are entering the oceanic food chain. As far as plastic entering the ocean, about 20% of the trash we know comes from ships and platforms that are offshore. The rest, sources from litter being blown into the sea, picked up by the tides on the beach, or intentional garbage dumping by who? By us. The worst part, ladies and gentlemen, these plastics don't biodegrade. So they break up into tiny pieces that are consumed by the fish, and we consume that fish. Plastic is killing more than 100,000 sea turtles and birds a year from ingestion and entanglement. Chemicals in plastics are released into the water as well as the atmosphere. Fish easily become contaminated from the chemicals in the water, and of course, there's a direct link of how plastic chemicals enter the food chain. Plastics are also getting to humans and impacting our health. Different plastics spread across the ocean as styrofoam breaks into smaller parts. Polystyrene components in it sink lower to the ocean, so the pollutants spread throughout the sea column. In fact, not only do the toxins in plastic affect the ocean, but act like sponges. They soak up other toxins from outside sources before entering the ocean. As these chemicals are ingested by animals or fish in the ocean, this is definitely not good for us. Like I said, whatever we put in the ocean, we take that in. Therefore, we humans ingest contaminated fish and other marine organisms. So how do these different types of toxin affect humans? First of all, we look at direct toxicity from plastic comes from lead, cadmium, and mercury that is found in plastics. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we need to look at plastics from the time they are produced and from the time they enter the market and from the time we use it. Plastic production also affects the health of those workers who are involved in the production of that. So we need to be cautious of that as well. Research shows that toxins from the plastic have been found in many fish in the oceans. Other toxins in plastics are directly linked to cancers, birth defects, immune system problems, and childhood development issues. While reading, I came across this use of toxins in plastic leads to endocrine disruption. And upon further research, I found that it has to do with the tissue lining in the uterus that is supposed to grow inside the uterus. However, ladies and gentlemen, the effect of that is these tissues start growing outside the uterus, and it's a very, very painful disorder. Sometimes when we look at plastic, we don't go beyond thinking about health. And I think these are some of the things we need to communicate with our people as to the reason why we need to be very serious about the plastics that we use. So, like I said, people are exposed to these chemicals not only during manufacturing, but also by using packages. So we look at production, we look at manufacturing, we look at uses, and look at the overall picture of plastic. What we see here is just plastic bottles. But we need to look at the whole cycle of these plastic bottles and where they lead to that. Ladies and gentlemen, other types of toxic plastics are BPA or health bisphenol A along with phthalates. And both of these are of great concern to human health. BPA is used in many things including plastic bottles and food packaging materials. Over time, the polymer chains of BPA break down and they enter the human body in many ways, from drinking contaminated water to eating a fish that is exposed to broken down toxins. So basically, it affects human hormonal function. We can prevent plastic contamination, and one way for this is to stop unsustainable plastic production usage. Looking at our home front, plastic pollution is of great concern to us as well. Locally, very serious. Some of the concerns we see from the health perspective is based on simple things like burning of plastics in all rubbish dumps, even in our backyard gardens. They generate toxic gas, dioxin, which causes cancer. Plastics found everywhere from street to roadsides, river creeks to farms and beaches in Fiji. Of course, it creates a very bad, sour-looking environment for the tourists. It also becomes a nuisance in the environment, and more so plastic pollution, like we said, becomes injurious to health if not controlled. In terms of mitigation measures, we encourage recycling bags and refusing plastic bags. We also encourage use of biodegradable synthetic plastic bags, and I'm glad that we have women from the Bar Women's Forum who are here to showcase the recycled bags. Ladies and gentlemen, though we have we are trying to encourage the public to use these bags. I think there's a lot of more effort that needs to put in, because we still see people walking out of supermarkets paying the 10 cents, now they have to pay 20 cents. I mean, I don't know, maybe we can increase it to $1 or something. We just have to deter people from using that. But we need to tell them why, and we need to give them probably more cheaper options. So I think it's good business for groups and organizations to promote more recycle bags and getting people into the habit of that. I mean, sometimes I'm guilty of forgetting. When I go to the counter, you want plastic? I say, no, okay, I'll carry my stuff. So it's a crusade that we have to launch against plastic. And if each one of us plays our part, I'm sure we'll be able to reduce the use of plastics in the environment. So we're looking at the Fijian government introduced the EKL levy back in 2017 and 2018 national budget. And this year it will remain as aligned to the Fiji's COP23 Environmental Protection Initiative, and which reinforces our government's commitment for all Fijians the right to have clean environment now and in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, the EKL Act also introduced a charge levy, and now we know it's increased to further 20 cents per bag. Of course, making it costly factor for citizens to use plastics. But again, I said we need to provide solutions. A week ago, I was in Manila, and there was this talk about environment and health. And when we were served our drink, there was no plastic straw. And it reminded me of the launch of not using plastic straws in Fiji, but what's the option that we have? And they have bamboo straws. So again, something for us to think about. Our women's groups are here. We have a lot of bamboo going around. I'm sure we can plant a lot of bamboo. So practical solutions have to be given to our people if we are trying to deter them from using something. So bamboo straws, a good way. Last night I was talking to the Assistant Minister, Lorna Eden, and she said in Pacific Harbour, I think they have a restaurant or something where they only use bamboo straws. So if you want people to stop using plastic straws, here, this is an alternative for you. Some things like that, practical solutions, is definitely going to work well in our fight against the use of plastics. Ladies and gentlemen, and another approach is solving basic plastic problems is that we as members of this fragile ecosystem need to be responsible for our trash. Almost everything that we buy comes in plastic. We need to choose what we buy. And while we have the opportunity, we should try to avoid buying plastic packaged in plastic. We should also recycle. And again, we said practical solutions like taking your own plastic bags with that. But all in all, ladies and gentlemen, coming from the health perspective, we already are facing a double burden, disease burden when it comes to NCDs and stuff. I'm sure we don't want to be further burdened with other complex, maybe emerging diseases that may arise because of our overuse of plastics. And so we will need to treat this issue with caution. We will need to work very close with our development partners and with our communities to ensure that each and everyone realizes why we have this thing against plastic. And I'm told that the average person produces about 200 grams of plastic waste every day. No wonder we are filling up the environment and our oceans with plastics. And when it comes to health issues, one of the things I have been telling my people is responsibility starts with each one of us. Whether it's health, whether it's plastic, whether it's climate change, food security, food scarcity, NCDs, we are talking about all that. It will have to start with each one of us taking ownership of the problem and becoming more responsible. As a government, we will continue to make regulations on plastic and sign treaties that minimize the amount of trash entering the oceans. But again, every citizen of this country has to take responsibility, and we will need to be accountable for our actions. I urge everyone to stop for a minute and reflect on the impact of plastics, and let us all start making positive changes. Well, we know it's late, but it's never too late to start. We know we have an issue at hand, and I'm sure we all can work together to find practical solutions for our people, not only to safeguard our health and our livelihood, but of course to safeguard the health and livelihood of our future generations. So ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing more deliberations throughout the day. Thank you very much.
Handed to us for our discussions later on. I'd like to ask you to please welcome our first panel presenter, private sector. So these are strategies, let's keep them in our heads and we'll take them forward. Thanks again to our panel. Another round of applause for them.